Anzio, spring of 1944. Captain William H. Mackay of the Fifth Army spotted 2,400 German troops with armor advancing toward the Allied beachhead. He was flying a fabric-covered 65-horsepower civilian trainer that cost the United States taxpayer $2,400. It carried no bombs, no guns, no rockets. Mackay picked up his radio and called a fire mission. 5,000 rounds of American artillery came down on that column. A captured German officer later estimated 50% casualties, roughly 1,200 men killed or wounded. One airplane, one radio, and a standing Wehrmacht order that every German soldier on the Western Front had already learned the hard way. When you see that airplane overhead, do not fire, do not move, do not reveal your position, because the next sound you hear will be the last one that matters. The answer was a system no other army on Earth had built. By the summer of 1944, the United States was the only major combatant in the war to develop centralized fire direction above the battery level. The British could mass guns for a set-piece barrage. The Soviets could saturate a kilometer of front with 200 tubes. The Germans could deliver technically precise fires from well-trained batteries, but none of them could do what the American Fire Direction Center made routine. Take a single voice on a radio, a forward observer whispering map coordinates from a hedgerow or a hilltop, and within minutes compute and mass battalion, group, or corps-level artillery onto that one point. The seed had been planted at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, in 1931, when gunnery instructor Carlos Brewer and his department first demonstrated massing an entire battalion by firing chart, reference to a common base point, corrected for propellant temperature, wind, air density, and the rotation of the Earth. All by hand, all on slide rules and plotting boards. What that system produced was time on target, TOT, the technique by which dozens of firing units at different ranges timed their salvos so that every shell arrived within 3 seconds of every other shell, all hitting the same patch of ground at the same instant. US Army troop reaction studies showed why this mattered. Within 2 seconds of first impact, more than half of exposed soldiers had gone prone behind cover. Within 8 seconds, nearly all of them had. A soldier prone with cover absorbed roughly 2/3 fewer casualties than one standing in the open. Conventional artillery gave men those seconds. The first ranging round was the warning. TOT eliminated it. The first sound was everything arriving at once. But the FDC was a brain. It needed eyes. And on the ground, a forward observer's eyes died fast. Every steeple, every prominent ridge, every brick chimney the Americans used as an observation post was the first thing German gunners targeted. Hedgerows blocked sightlines. Reverse slopes hid entire formations. The solution was overhead, and it cost $2,400. The Piper J-3 Cub was a 2-seat tandem civilian trainer, certified in 1938 and sold for just over $1,000 at the factory in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. Piper built one every 20 minutes. More than 75% of the 435,000 pilots who came through Roosevelt's civilian pilot training program learned to fly in a Cub. Bill Piper Jr. put it plainly, "All we had to do was paint the Cub olive drab to produce a military airplane." He was not exaggerating. The L-4 Grasshopper, the Army's designation after April 1942, carried a 65-horsepower Continental Flat 4. Cruise speed, 75 miles an hour. A sedan on the Pennsylvania Turnpike could outrun it. No armor, no armament. Fabric skin over a welded steel tube fuselage. The standard pilot defense was a Colt 45 service pistol stuffed under the seat.
With pilot, observer, and a 25-pound SCR-610 radio aboard, the airplane routinely flew over its rated gross weight of 1,220 pounds. What it could do was see. From a foxhole, an observer fought terrain, hedgerows, woods, folds in the earth, the weather itself. From 1,000 feet at 60 miles an hour, the L-4 observer looked over all of it. Into the reverse slopes, behind the tree lines, into the rear areas where German guns hid. Hardy Cannon, an artillery pilot, described the view as making the mysteries of the ground laid bare. Linked by FM radio to the Fire Direction Center, a single L-4 crew could call a mission, watch the spotting rounds, walk them onto the target, and call fire for effect, bringing the full weight of American artillery to bear in minutes. The 1941 Louisiana maneuvers had proved the concept so decisively that umpires banned the Cubs mid-exercise for giving the Third Army an unfair advantage. Major Delbert Bristol rebuilt the program after its disastrous combat debut at Torch, became First Army's artillery air officer, and helped plan the air OP component of Overlord. By 1944, every U.S. field artillery battalion in the European theater had 2 L-4s and 2 pilots, artillerymen first, aviators second. What one of those pilots did with 6 bazooka tubes and a panel of toggle switches at Arracourt would change the way the Wehrmacht thought about every Cub in the sky. That story is coming. But first, what it cost to fly one of these things over German lines. At Anzio, in the spring of 1944, Captain William H. McKay of the Fifth Army spotted approximately 2,400 German troops with tanks advancing toward the Allied beaches. The Anzio plain was flat and exposed, overlooked from the Alban Hills by German guns that could see every movement below. McKay's L-4 was the only way to see back. He called the fire mission. Roughly 5,000 rounds came down. A captured German officer later estimated 50% casualties, 1,200 men from 1 airplane, 1 radio, and 1 observer leaning out of a plexiglass greenhouse at 1,000 feet. In those same weeks, Lieutenants Payne E. O. Lisney and Richard W. Blake flew 50 pints of blood plasma into the besieged beachhead in their Cubs within 24 hours of the request being received. Normandy proved the L-4 indispensable and lethal to its own crews. Through the bocage, the Cub's slow speed and low altitude made it the only Allied platform that could reliably spot German armor hidden in hedgerow country. Fast Air Corps fighters missed what a man at 60 miles an hour and 500 feet could see. The price? In June and July of 1944, General Bradley's First Army lost 49 spotter aircraft and 33 pilots. 1 in 3 killed in 2 months. Captain Francis P. Farrell, air officer of the 3rd Armored Division Artillery, was killed over Stolberg. These men flew from farm fields within range of German guns in fabric airplanes with nothing between them and a machine gun burst but doped cotton and a prayer. The casualty rate gave the lie to any image of safe flying. Then came Arracourt, the 20th of September 1944. The Battle of Arracourt, the largest American-German tank engagement on the Western Front before the Bulge. General Hasso von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army had assembled 262 armored vehicles, Panthers, Panzer IVs, assault guns, to crush Combat Command A of the 4th Armored Division. Heavy fog had grounded every fighter bomber in the sector. Around noon, the fog began to lift over Lorraine.
Major Charles Carpenter, a former history teacher from Moline, Illinois, commanding the 4th Armored Division's reconnaissance aircraft, took off in his L-4H, serial number 43-3426, named Rosie the Rocketer. Strapped under the wings were 6 M1A1 bazooka tubes, 3 per side, rigged to a panel of 6 toggle switches in the upper left wing root. He spotted a company of Panthers and armored cars advancing on Arracourt. He dove. Through ground fire and machine pistol bursts, he came in again and again, returned twice to reload, and fired at least 16 rockets. 2 Panthers immobilized, several armored cars destroyed. The formation broke off. After his 5th confirmed tank kill, Carpenter told a Stars and Stripes correspondent, "Word must be getting around to watch out for Cubs with bazookas on them. Every time I show up now, they shoot with everything they have. They never used to bother Cubs." That last sentence is the key. They never used to bother Cubs. Carpenter was the exception. 6 tank kills by war's end. A field modification, no manual authorized. The vast majority of L-4 missions were unarmed observation, but his attacks broke the old German calculus. Before Carpenter, Wehrmacht troops ignored the Cubs overhead. After Carpenter, they faced a choice with no good answer. Shoot and reveal your position to the American FDC, guaranteeing a time-on-target barrage within minutes, or hold fire and hope the fabric airplane circling above isn't carrying bazookas. Either way, you lost. Standing Wehrmacht instructions reflected exactly that logic. Unit-level post-war recollections consistently describe orders to maintain camouflage discipline and refrain from small arms fire when an L-4 appeared overhead. German ground commanders repeatedly urged the Luftwaffe to sweep the Cubs from the sky, but by 1944, the Luftwaffe could not contest American airspace in any sustained way. Where they managed it, 3 Bf-109s hunting Lieutenant Darwin Gerard of the 320th Glider Field Artillery Battalion over Nijmegen on the 21st of October, 4 more catching Lieutenant John Gargiglietti of the 456th Parachute Field Artillery on approach. These were fighter sweeps of opportunity, not systematic defense. And when the L-4 couldn't fly, the consequences were immediate. The bulge proved it. Heavy overcast, fog, and snow grounded most spotters for the first critical days of the German offensive in December 1944. Only the 42nd Field Artillery Battalion's pair of Cubs got aloft on the 16th. The 99th and 2nd Division airfields were overrun. Pilots abandoned their planes and escaped on foot. Without the eyes overhead, American artillery effectiveness collapsed back to ground-observed accuracy. Limited, slow, blind behind the next ridge. Captain John Johnson, 12th Corps Artillery, said it flatly. The Air Force stood down during the German advance at the bulge, but we were out there flying every day at 500 to 600 feet. Weather be damned. The Cessna L-19 Bird Dog replaced the Grasshopper after the war. All metal, 213 horsepower, the iconic forward air controller of Korea and Vietnam, the mount of the clandestine Ravens over Laos. The institutional fight the L-4 had won, organic Army aviation, owned by artillerymen, not the Air Corps, became the seedbed for the Army's adoption of the helicopter after the Air Force split off in 1947. Without the bureaucratic precedent the Cub established, the Army arguably never owns the rotary wing fleet. What the pilots remembered was not the airplane. It was the sound. The thin clatter of a 65-horsepower Continental, audible on the ground, easy to mistake for a tractor. And what came after the sound stopped circling. Captain John Johnson's summation: these Cubs did more damage to the German army than our bombers and fighters. He overstated the case, but the men who heard that engine overhead, on both sides of the line, knew exactly what he meant.